This is my second time reading Moby-Dick. I first read it about a decade ago, but this is the first time that I've really paid attention to Ahab's disability and what it represents in this book. Hello everybody, welcome back to my channel Eclectic Read. Today I want to talk about Ahab's disability and how it features in the story and in my view explains his behavior. I'm not going to be spoiling the ending of the book, but I am going to speak in detail about Ahab's character, as well as Stubb, the second mate, who is the most prominent mate in the story up until the end of the book. In Moby-Dick, we have a captain named Ahab, who is leading the Pecod to an albino whale named Moby-Dick. When Ishmael and his good friend Queequeg join this whaling ship, however, they do not know who their captain is. They know his name is Ahab, but they don't meet him, not until well into the first leg of the voyage. And then it's too late because Ahab tells them while they're out at sea that their goal is to catch one specific sperm whale, the one who removed his leg. And now Ahab has an ivory leg, which is his prosthetic. In this highly masculine, highly ableist world of whale fishery, and that is the term that is used in this book, fishery, because, side note, Ishmael insists that whales are fish. They're not, but he has a whole chapter about it. In this very masculine, ableist world, Ahab is seen as weak, and this new weakness is apparent in the way that Stubb treats him. Stubb, the second mate, is somebody who makes a lot of jokes at the expense of other people, particularly people who are seen as weaker. We see this in the way that he treats the few Black and Indigenous characters on the ship, particularly the cook and Pip, who is a sailor who works below decks because he gets nervous. The way that Stubb treats them is really awful. Being the second mate, he should not treat the captain the way he does, but he does confront Ahab, and he tells him that he should stop walking the decks and maybe he should, create a space for his artificial leg so that nobody has to hear his leg. So clearly, Ahab's disability is an annoyance to at least some of the characters. Now, I would expect that a captain who has been insulted this way would flog the sailor, but Ahab only insults him and sends Stubb below decks, where he then sleeps. And while he is sleeping, he has a dream. And it is this dream that I think first underscores the really interesting way that disability features in this book. In the dream, Ahab kicks Stubb with his artificial leg, and Stubb tries to kick Ahab back, except his leg flies off his body and becomes attached to Ahab's legs. And so now Ahab has a third leg and he has become a pyramid. And of course, toppling a pyramid is so much harder than toppling a person with two legs. Initially, Stubb is very much offended that he has been kicked by Ahab, but then he thinks, well, it's not really his real leg, it is his artificial leg, so it's not the same thing. And this, I think, really shows how Ahab has been emasculated by his disability. He is no longer seen as a powerful captain because he doesn't have two real legs. He has this disability. In Stubb's dream, he encounters a merman, and this merman has a hunchback. But then when Stubb tries to kick the merman, he notices that there are spikes on this man's hump. And so just as Ahab has found ways to compensate for his disability, so has this merman. And the merman tells Stubb, why are you offended by being kicked by Ahab? Don't you know that this new leg has made him almost like royalty? So you should be honored. You should be honored that you're being kicked by royalty. So once again, in this dream, we see how Ahab's disability both others him and weakens him, but also makes him somebody to fear and someone who is almost mythical in his otherness. For the first time, Stubb is actually humbled. He doesn't want to insult Ahab anymore, and he tells Flint that. And this is striking because, as I said, Stubb likes to beat up on people who are weaker than him or perceived as weaker than him. But Ahab is no victim. He really does what he can to try to enforce his authority. And to make this expedition suit him, first, he, right in the middle of the sea, tells all the other sailors that they're after one particular whale, and that is Moby-Dick. Not even Starbuck, who is one of the very few characters in the story who knows what is happening, not even he can say no to Ahab. We come to learn later in the story that Ahab had a lot of complications with his leg, and that is the reason why the owners of the Paycod did not allow anybody to see Ahab, and also probably why Ahab didn't show himself. Even so, Ahab finds a way to be a part of the chase, to be able to be in the boats with the other mates, and that is by smuggling some other sailors onto the ship. Fadala, who is this stereotypical Zoroastrian character who worships fire. Again, very stereotypical. He also modifies the boat so that his stump can fit into the boat while he's standing, which will really help him to kill the whale. There is a certain kinship between Ahab and Moby-Dick. Ahab has a leg of ivory, an ivory that comes from a whale, and Moby-Dick has consumed Ahab's leg. And we come to learn later that these whales can never fully digest a human limb. So there is something about Ahab in Moby-Dick, in addition to the harpoon that has never been fully dislodged from Moby-Dick. Finally, Ahab finds a captain who has seen Moby-Dick and indeed has been marked by Moby-Dick. He lost his own arm to Moby-Dick. And there's this wonderful scene in which Ahab tries to get on this captain's ship, but he needs assistance because he has this leg and he can't easily go on the ship. And so they bring down a hook that helps him get on the ship. When Ahab sees this captain's artificial arm, they entwine essentially their limbs. And there's this kinship where they both have experienced Moby Dick, except that this captain does not want to go after Moby Dick. He wants to leave Moby Dick alone. Similarly, I think, in the way that Stubb has met his match with Ahab and he no longer wants to go after him, this captain knows that he should not pursue Moby Dick further, and Ahab is not interested. He wants revenge. He wants to restore what he has lost, what Moby Dick has taken away from him, which is more than just his limb. It is his authority, it is his masculinity. And I think this is what makes disability in this book so interesting. It's not just a story about revenge, it's a story about wanting to restore one's authority. And in that way, I think Ahab is very much humanized by his disability. Like, we see him as more than just a maniac who wants to kill a whale, a particular whale, because of course that's the whole purpose of a whaling ship, is to kill sperm whales, but this particular whale. And I sympathize with him. I understand why he's on this expedition. I understand why he wants to kill Moby Dick. The owners of the Paycod didn't think that he was fit enough to be on a boat, but he knew that he was, and he made sure that he could be a part of the chase. So these are all of my rambly thoughts about it. Let me know if you have anything to add to this. Please don't spoil the ending of the story. I don't like Stubb in the story. I don't like the way that he mistreats and insults people he deems as inferior, but he does meet his match in Ahab, and I find that particularly compelling. Thank you everybody for watching, and I will talk to you later. Bye now.